The worldwide coronavirus pandemic is no joke. In addition to the climbing number of deaths around the world economy is taking a huge hit. In the US, millions of people, whether employed or self employed, are finding themselves without a job, working reduced schedule with reduced pay, or fighting to keep their small businesses afloat. And that means that unemployment benefits have become critical to tens of millions of workers. So today we're going to talk about unemployment during the coronavirus pandemic. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Budget Bounce. If we haven't met, I'm Jen, and we talk about living life on a budget, saving for our future, paying down debt, and all things related to personal finance and our money on this channel. If that's something that's up your alley and you want to join this conversation, then click on that subscribe button below. Make sure you tap on the bell and select all notifications so you'll get notified every time I post a new video. So I'm going to talk about 4 different things regarding unemployment today. First of all, we're going to talk about the reasons that you might be able to get unemployment during the coronavirus pandemic, and it will include several reasons that are not typically things that make you eligible outside of a pandemic. Second, we're going to talk about the questions that you need to be asking your unemployment office when you get in touch with them. While you can do a lot of things online, there are times when you just need to talk to a person. And yes, it means you're going to have to wait a long time on the phone to get through. But when you get that person after you've waited all that time, I want to make sure that you are asking all the right questions. And as it happens, I have a little bit of an insider's view into this since my husband works for the unemployment division in our state and is talking to people all day long about their unemployment benefits. So he gave me some pointers on this. I'm not just making this up. He wants to make sure that when you get through to a person that you are asking all the right questions. The next thing we're going to talk about is FPUC, which is Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. I'm going to explain all of that to you so you understand what that is and how that's going to work for you if you are somebody who is eligible for unemployment benefits. And finally, I'm going to talk about pandemic unemployment assistance, and that is really geared more towards the self-employed gig worker type people as opposed to the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is geared towards workers who are working for an employer. The CARES Act has dramatically expanded who's eligible for unemployment. So let's start with the reasons that you may be eligible for unemployment at this point in time that you might not otherwise be if there wasn't a pandemic going on. So let's start with the basics of what happens when we don't have a pandemic. First of all, you have to be available to work and you have to be able to work. And absent either one of those things, you're not eligible for unemployment. You have to be seeking work. You have to be taking action to actually continue to seek employment to be able to receive unemployment while you're not working. All of those things in some situations have gone out the window. They don't matter right now in some circumstances. All right, let's start with the fact that the schools are closed. The schools are closed and the daycares are closed due to COVID-19. If that's your situation, then you could be eligible for unemployment because your kids aren't going to school, you can't put them in daycare, and if they're at home with you, you may not be able to go to work because you can't leave them at home by themselves. You also might be facing the fact that you can work at home, but that's not a possibility because your children require too much attention to be able to focus on your work. So they are recognizing the fact that if you're the primary caregiver, it can be extremely challenging to be able to focus and actually remain productive while you are at home when you have small children. Keep in mind, primary caregiver is important. So you need to be able to show that you are the primary caregiver for the children and that there are no other people available to take care of the children for you. Another reason you might be eligible is because you have to stay home to care for a spouse, a child, or a parent who has been diagnosed with COVID-19 by a licensed healthcare professional. Another reason you might be eligible is if you have a pre-existing condition that makes you high risk for COVID-19 and a healthcare provider has written documentation for you stating that you should not be in the workplace because you cannot be exposed to this due to the high risk that you have. Also, if you have somebody in your household, like a spouse or a child, or maybe your parents are living with you, those are all examples of things in relation to someone else where you may be able to get unemployment because you're not able to work for these reasons. Remember, a licensed healthcare professional has to document this You have to have it in writing and provide it to your unemployment agency, your unemployment division in your state to be able to get unemployment benefits for these reasons. Another reason why you might get it is because you have a government imposed or recommended quarantine going on. It might be local, it might be county, it might be state. If you have a government imposed mandate that you are not able to go to the workplace and work, and telework is not available to you, or you're unable to do it because of the situation with your children, then you may be eligible for unemployment benefits. If you're self-employed and your work is affected by COVID-19, you could get unemployment benefits. So we're talking about freelancers and the rideshare drivers and all kinds of delivery services who, DoorDash and Grubhub and all of these, right? If you're an Amazon Flex driver, you're all self-employed. And if that work has been impacted, then and your income has gone down, you could be eligible for benefits through unemployment. Another reason that you might be eligible is because you've been offered a new job that you now cannot start because of COVID-19. If that business was impacted by COVID-19 to a point that they cannot hire new people, now all of a sudden you're out of work that you had lined up, and you could be eligible for unemployment for those reasons. And the last thing I have on my list is if you can't get another job because of COVID-19, you could be eligible for unemployment. All right, so I've got some things for you to note here in regard to this list that I've just shared with you. First of all, we all know that the states are backed up. Remember, we've been hearing in the news the antiquated systems that so many states have. Many states are way behind on technology and their processes. There's so much room for improvement. And now all of this that's happening with the pandemic has really shined a light on how extremely behind they are on all of those things. And they weren't doing it well when they had the regular level coming in, and now they are just being inundated and they're not prepared to handle it. All of that to say, it could take you, once you finally get unemployment, everything that they need for your claim, it could take 3 to 6 weeks for you to get your first round of benefits. But until then, you need to be patient and understand that they have a backlog and they're going to get to you as soon as they possibly can. Also remember that each state has different minimums and maximums for weekly benefits and that kind of thing. And it's all run off of the median income for that state. So it will vary from one state to the next. It might even vary from 1 year to the next as the state's median income changes. And the other thing to remember is if you don't qualify for any state benefits at all, then you probably are not going to qualify for the federal benefits. So again, that is going to be state by state. You need to be looking at what those are. But like the state we're in Illinois, you have to be eligible for at least $1 per week of state unemployment benefits to be able to get your hands on the federal unemployment benefits, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. All right, next up, let's talk about questions that you need to make sure that you're asking when you get a hold of somebody in the unemployment division in your state. First up, what is the certification cycle? So it could be weekly or it could be biweekly, and you need to know what that is because you do not want to miss the certification window whenever it comes up. The next thing you want to ask is, what is the process to send in documentation? Whatever the documentation might be. Most commonly right now during the pandemic, you might have to send in something from a healthcare provider, but there are other things that you may need to send as well. So you want to know exactly what that process is for your state, and know that many of them do not accept email. They don't accept electronic documentation. You may have to fax it or mail it. So you want to make sure that you are getting it to the right place in the format that they need it in. Next up, you want to ask, how long does the approval process for a physician or a healthcare provider's documentation take? So you want to have an idea of, okay, once I get the right thing to you, everything that you need, how long is that approval process going to take? If you are an independent contractor or a self-employed person, you want to find out exactly what they need from you to send in. Now, if you are an Uber driver, or you deliver groceries for Instacart, or you work for Amazon Flex, they have a lot of different reports available to you about the work you're doing and your income and all that good stuff. But if you're a freelancer who is writing, or maybe you're doing video editing for someone, or you're doing podcast editing, or whatever it might be, if you are a freelancer, You are running your own business and no one is running those reports for you except you. So you need to find out exactly what it is that they need so that you can gather it and get it to them correctly the first time so that this process isn't any more drawn out than it has to be. Okay, this next point is about partial benefits. So you can get partial benefits. That's always been a thing, but now even more people can get partial benefits. So what you need to know, what you need to ask is, how much can I make? How much can I earn before it affects how much I can get from unemployment? So you want to make sure that you ask those questions, that question, so that you can pinpoint that and have an idea, because once you go over the threshold of your earnings, it will impact how much they will pay out through unemployment. And the last thing, always ask to backdate. Always ask to go back as far as you can. They may say no, but that's the worst they can do is say no. Their process may not allow for backdating. There are many things that's not allowed, but there are other things that the pandemic is happening that they're backdating to the middle of March right now. So ask and know that you might get lucky and they might actually give it to you, but you never know if you don't ask. Okay, so next up, I want to talk about the two most prominent parts of the CARES Act in regard to unemployment benefits. And I'm going to start with the federal pandemic unemployment compensation. The first thing that this does is it adds 13 weeks of benefits, of federal benefits, onto whatever your state's cap is. In the state of Illinois, it happens to be 26 weeks. In other states, it's only 24. Whatever it is for your state, this allows it to be extended another 13 weeks. The second thing that this does is it adds $600 in weekly benefits on top of the state weekly benefit. So that is going to run currently through the end of July. So this is available for the entire duration of the state benefits you would normally receive, 26 in Illinois, plus another 13 weeks for the federal extension. And just so you know, some states have shared, Illinois is one of them. So you have to be eligible for at least $1 in state level benefits in order for you to be eligible for the additional $600. And you may be eligible if you've never worked before. So if you were scheduled to start a new job, which I mentioned this earlier, you were scheduled to start a new job, but you're not able to get there. So earlier I talked about that you can't start the job because it's not available. This is a little bit different. You can't get there because of COVID related reasons like childcare. You can't go to work because your children have to stay home and somebody has to stay with them. So that is something that qualifies you even though you're not working. If your job offer was rescinded because of COVID-19, so if you had a job offer that was rescinded because of COVID-19, you can get unemployment benefits. Another reason that you might qualify under this is if you became the breadwinner and the major supporter of the household because the previous primary breadwinner died as a direct result of COVID-19. So as you can see, all of the things that I just listed are really geared towards people who are working for other people. So you are working for an employer. You're getting W-2 income, really is what we're talking about, right? So now let's move into the pandemic unemployment assistance, which is really geared towards self-employed, freelancing, 1099, independent contractor, whatever you want to call it. All of those things are the same. Those people are self-employed. They are working for themselves. They might get paid by other people, but they are employed by themselves. They are not receiving a W-2 from any of their clients. They are working for themselves. So let's talk about what this does for that group of folks. So the first thing that this did was it created the availability of unemployment benefits for this group of people that I just described to you. The next thing is it provides up to 39 weeks of benefits. This one is available retroactively back to January 27th of 2020 and is available all the way through the end of 2020 to December 31st. The amount of benefits paid out will vary by state. Again, I don't have that information. You need to do your research in your state to find out what that is. And the benefits for each person in this group are calculated based on a weekly benefit amount that is available within each of the different states. So again, you have to look up what is specific to your state under the unemployment insurance laws. Now, let's remember, I mentioned earlier that not all states are equipped. In fact, none of the states were equipped to deal with this when this came out in March. They have to revamp their systems for people to be able to submit their claims under the pandemic unemployment assistance. And not all states are able to just turn on a dime and make that happen. Know that each state has to make updates and it may take some time, but you need to be diligent and persistent. So to get this, you cannot be eligible for the state's regular unemployment benefits. You also need to be unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable or unavailable to work. And when I say that, it has to be because of certain health conditions or economic conditions that are directly affected by COVID-19. And finally, if you're a small business owner, you may be eligible if your primary source of income is coming from work that you do for your own small business or farm, as an example. All right, so let's summarize what we've talked about so far. If your income has been affected in any way by the coronavirus pandemic, you need to apply for unemployment benefits. Remember, the worst they can do is say no, but they are saying no a lot less these days. At best, they can say yes, and you can get the much needed income that you need to get you and your family through this awful, awful time in this pandemic. To apply, you need to contact your state's unemployment division as soon as you can after you experience a reduction or a loss of income. Remember that if you are self-employed, there are some challenges there, but again, you need to reach out as soon as you possibly can and get that process started. Find out exactly what it is that they need from you and start gathering that information and getting it to them. I included a link down below for you that takes you to a website that has the phone numbers and websites of all 50 states for their unemployment division. Next up, I'm going to be talking about your money in uncertain times. So click right here to see what you can do to help you work through the anxiety and the stress that so many are dealing with right now. I'll see you over there.